Hello, everyone. Welcome back to today's workshop. And this is special because this is the last day of the pre-sale pricing for my new program, Everything Sucks Now What, which is the ideal class for you if you are depressed or you're feeling hopeless or you just feel like giving up. So this is the perfect class. It's uncustomary.org/everything sucks. And yeah, today we're going to talk about the absolute worst advice we've ever received. And I really love this topic. Um, so drop a the emoji in the chat if you've ever been told something like, just smile. Why don't you just, try yoga for this very specific thing that you're going through? um, or just think positive because your dog died, something like kind of patronizing, objectively bad advice. And I really, I am definitely somebody here who 100% understands and believes that we can't just wallow, right? We're not, I mean, I believe in personal development. I believe in the fact that we can't let pain win everything overall. But I mean, there's really no point to just having these canned response tote bag things that we don't even really know what they mean, you know? When we say things like, just do this, we don't know what we're talking about really. And in fact, going along with that, most of the time we really don't even know what we're talking about with psychology. And I don't even want to get into that can of worms, but I mean, 15 years ago, when I started talking about self love and self care and psychology coming from even my own, not just lived experience, but going to college and having multiple degrees in psychology, I I would not have believed you if you would have told me that, in 15 years that it would have become so much a part of everyday jargon. So we really got to kind of know what we're talking about, especially when we're giving people advice in terms of being so vulnerable, being so, uh, you know, having such a hard time. And I really wanted to do this workshop because bad advice doesn't just annoy us, it makes us feel invisible. And psychology research shows us that when we feel invalidated, it actually intensifies our own distress. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to take that invalidation, we're going to have a laugh at it, and we're going to flip it into absurd and kind and weirdly practical alternatives that you can actually use. So, why does this matter? Well, when you're in pain, the last thing that you want is someone dismissing you. And again, like I said, I don't think that we should dwell the whole time. That's not what I believe in overall. I don't think that we should just stay in a space and stay there the entire time and live our lives that way forever. I don't think pain should win overall. I don't think that we should use our diagnoses or experience or circumstance to reframe it into a victim mentality. That's not the thing to do to live a helpful, happy, fun life. But when we're in pain, when we've just experienced something, to just have it, flipped back on us and be like, well, what if you just did this? It's I mean, for some people, it can be very helpful. I'm the kind of person that sometimes that does actually flip me out of it, but you have to know your audience, right? And when you're in pain, most of the time, what we need is someone to kind of just be there with us. And a lot of those new agey kind of terms make me have that feeling of like, I think they call it the ick now, which is another thing that the ick word kind of gives me the ick. But uh, the term that I was thinking of was holding space. When I first heard that, I was like, oh, I don't really like it. But I think that term came up just because we didn't really have a phrase for it before, of just kind of sitting with somebody and listening and experiencing just the beat of compassion and just not having a point of doing anything except listening, because otherwise that was just called therapy, I guess. So sometimes we also repeat these cliches to ourselves, you know? I think that's why this reframing matters. That's why having these narratives matter and being aware of it matters. We're not just making a funny list today, we're creating a survival tool. a list of reminders that you can reach out to next time that someone or your own inner critic is telling you to like just snap out of it, right? And this is exactly the kind of work that we're going to be doing inside of the program that's called Everything Sucks, Now What? And that program is really just so it's called that because it's like, I mean, it's literally what we're doing right here, right? So you're right. Everything does suck. Okay. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but okay. Now, what do you want to do? What do you want to do about it? Do you want to stay here forever? I'm here with you, right? Like, I agree with you. Everything sucks. There are so many things that can suck. Every the list is long. And do you want to stay here or do you want to make a change? And if you want to make a change, here's how we can do that. And we're going to do it in a really fun, like psychological, existential, absurdist kind of fun, silly way. So we're going to flip scripts. We're going to reclaim your own inner world with weirdness and have practical tools that are there for the worst days that are just like, I can't even get out of bed. But today is the last day to grab that pre-sale price and the payment plans. And we're starting October 5th. So when I was first making this, I was thinking about the cliches, right? The bad advice of the cliche kind of things, the tote bag inspirations, because sometimes those really just make me very angry. And the thing is too, that as I was going through this and I was posting online and saying, what's the worst advice that you've ever been given? And I realized, sometimes the worst advice isn't actually a cliche, like just smile or whatever, good vibes only. It's the kind of advice that sounds practical or protective, but it's actually about keeping you small, not letting you express yourself, making sure that you don't really get to be who you are. So these would maybe look like comments that say things like, now don't be too confident, it'll go to your head. Or I don't want you to draw too much attention to yourself when you go out there. You're going to embarrass our family. Or everybody already does that. How are you going to do that in such a saturated market? You're never going to stand out. And people often say things to us like these because they're scared. I think a parent or a caregiver is a really good example of this because they're worried that, I mean, really what they want for us mostly is just that we're going to be safe. We're going to be taken care of. We're going to have enough money. We're going to not be, you know, bullied or whatever, right? They're afraid that if we fail, that we're not going to be okay. And that's what they want for us because they love us so much. And sometimes they're afraid that in other situations or relationships that we're going to outgrow them. And that may be that expressing ourselves is going to make us vulnerable. But instead of actually kind of going through this very honest conversation of saying, hey, look, I'm actually really feeling scared right now, and I don't want you to do that. And here are my specific requests. And this is why I feel this way. This is why I feel angry and scared and protective. And it's because I love you. But please know that you are your own person. Obviously, these are just my concerns. What happens is it comes out like, don't do that. It's not going to work. I don't want you to do that. And it comes out mean, and then it gets into our own heads. And instead of really protecting us, it plants these seeds of doubt in us that we carry for years and become our own beliefs on accident. So what I mean by that is, like, when you go through your life and something happens, you think that thought, the thing that was told to you, you think that is your first thought. As your inner critic, as your first inner monologue thought, you hear that first, and you don't even know that that's not even necessarily your own belief. It's just something that you heard so young or so often that you now are like, well, I guess that's true, you know? It's like, money is a really interesting example. I my an example for me was my mom has always said things like, $250 is the highest that I'm willing to go with a specific bill per month. And that hasn't really changed even over decades or inflation. And it's so interesting because whenever there's a bill that exceeds that amount, I hear her in my head say, that's too much. And I don't know, like, I don't believe that personally, but that's something that I hear, even though it's not mine, you know? So it doesn't really matter what category of life it's in, whether it's love, relationships, money, business, body image, it doesn't really matter. We kind of carry these protection things that they heard maybe even from their parents, and we just keep going with them. So in the program Everything Sucks Now What, we are really trying to do our absolute best about reclaiming what our own right is to take up our space, even when the world is telling us to shrink, even when it's about like remembering our own weirdness. I'm so really about being weird and remembering that that is what we have to offer here. It's not just about embracing it or not like numbing it out, but amplifying it, turning our weirdness and our art and our joy up and allowing it not to just have room, but remembering that that's specifically what we have to offer here and expressing it and delivering that to the world. So if you're here now in the replay on YouTube or in the Positive Pulse, drop like a no Ghostbuster sign if you've ever been told to like not shine too brightly in so many words, like you're being too much, you're being too extra. Or you can share in the chat something that you used to love doing that someone told you like wasn't worth it or it wasn't going to work out. Now, here's another thing about bad advice. Sometimes we need, sometimes we stop needing anyone else to say it and we just start repeating it to ourselves, right? Like how I was mentioning, like the thing with my mom with the payment, and it becomes the voice of our inner critic. So maybe these things, whether it's a cliche or the practical advice of the protecting kind of thing, it doesn't really matter. But that bad advice isn't necessarily coming from someone else external, it's coming from our own minds. So it's like, don't try. You're just going to fail. You're an idiot. You're never going to be successful. You're not creative. You're just too much, or you're not enough, or you're too quiet, or whatever it is, right? And again, going back, maybe it's something that a parent or a teacher or a friend said something 30 years ago and it just stuck and we end up living it like it's gospel even though it's not true. And that is why reframing matters so much, because every time you flip it, you get to experience the fact that you are loosening the grip of that inner critic and you're actually saying that I'm in charge. I get to rewrite the script now. And inside of Everything Sucks Now What, you don't just reframe. We're practicing building a whole toolkit of alternative scripts, rituals, reminders, so that you're not just stuck with an old voice, but you're actually just kind of really resetting everything. I want you to I'm writing it and creating it from a place of I understand if you're just like on the floor and you can't even imagine going to get a sip of water, because I know what that's like still. But I'm also making it so that once we build up from there, that you don't have to go back to where you were that got you there in the first place. You know, I want it to be a place where we're just kind of like, we're just ripping off the tablecloth and we're just starting over. So maybe drop like an ear in the chat if you've ever caught your inner critic saying something that was someone else's voice originally. And maybe you're just realizing it now. Or you could type a phrase in that you've been told that you now realize is just like playing on repeat in your head. We all have them. So now what I want to do is I want to think about some of the worst advice that we've ever got when we were depressed, when we were anxious, when we were struggling, and or just unsolicited, right? And you can tell us in the chat, you can tell us later if you're on the replay, and I'm going to talk about some of the classics, okay? And I also want to let you know that we have a bonus for you today. So in the Positive Pulse, when you're done here, I want you to go into the Positive Pulse, which is my free community, and there's 250 resources in there, okay? And you get to see all of the stuff in the library as soon as you log in and make an account on Mighty Networks. And that's also where all of my other programs live. So like if you wanted to get the Everything Sucks Now What program, that's where you would get that. It's great. But then you can also find all of my other stuff there. It's really just the merriment making hub, right? And all you have to do is make a free account and then you just get access to everything. So you can find that at uncustomary.org/pp. And here, let me put up that link just so you can see it. And yeah, so when you're done here, the point of me talking about that was actually just that I wanted to let you know that we have a bonus, and it is the bad advice worksheet. So when you get in there, you will find it's called the anti-advice survival list. So all you have to do once you're inside the Positive Pulse is go over to the library and resource section on the sidebar, and then you'll see the 250 resources divided by theme, and you're going to scroll down to the stuck autopilot section, which is where this replay lives, and inside of that you're going to get the worksheet, and you can download that, and I'm going to go through some of them today. And either way, you're going to have this as kind of just like a resource for you in the future. Okay. All right. And I am going to blow my nose and I apologize. Okay. So, thinking about the worst advice you've ever been given. I mean, my goodness. So, someone when I was putting this out in the world um during the week and just kind of feeling around asking people like what is the worst advice that you have been given, one of the people said, let me read it. I remember being told my head was too big and I shouldn't be confident and eager when I was around 15 years old, and it really messed with me for so long until I realized I literally just don't have to believe that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And like, what is the point of telling somebody you shouldn't be so confident? You shouldn't be so eager. We can take that backwards, right? And probably some of it's coming from the protection aspect, maybe, because the people that are telling you that probably at 15 are coming from your peers, maybe from your teachers also. So if it's coming from your peers, that's probably influenced from their caregivers, right? Teachers, parents, things like that. And then those people have also been influenced by previous people in that position that are just passing down fear of protection. But then there's between the protection of being like, hey, I don't want you to get your hopes up. I don't want you to think that like just because you think that you're so confident that you're going to be able to get everything that you want in life. I'm out here, I'm over 30, I'm 40, I'm even 25 and I'm seeing how the world works and it's not always so easy. So I don't want you to get your hopes up because I've had my heart broken in many different areas of the world and I don't want you to be so naive, right? So maybe that's where it's coming from a little bit, but we're not being honest. We're not saying the full thought. So it doesn't come across like that. And then there's also that jealousy, right? Because if you have become older and seen how the world works and had your heart broken in all these areas, and you were once someone who had confidence and had naivety, and and now you see what's happened, it's like, oh wow, I wish I could get that back, right? And I think that that's something that we really don't talk about enough. Is one of the things that really trips us out when we are feeling like we feel hopeless and we feel like giving up, something that I think is really, really rooted underneath a lot of this is the fact that our feeling of innocence and naivety and trust, which is really intermixed in all of that, has been taken from us. And once you see behind the curtain of something, you can't really unsee it, right? So we feel angry and it's hard to kind of get back that sense of innocence and naivety and the beginning of something because you really only have it once, you know? So when we are seeing someone who is experiencing something that we don't feel like we can get back, we kind of not I'm not saying that we do, but in this situation of this example of the person that was saying that they were 15 and confident and eager, and people were like, "What's your problem?" Right? And then they have to pinpoint a reason, like your ears are too big, and it's like, "What are you talking about?" Right? So I I just want to say, like, I think what's happening here is they're angry. They're not happy with their own lives, right? At a very, that we kind of hear that over and over. Like it's about them, right? They're upset with their own lives and they're projecting it onto you. Yes, that's true. And going deeper, I do think that a lot of it is about they have lost their sense of joy, wonder, awe, innocence, naivety, and some of those things they feel like can't be reinstated. And if you feel like that, I get that. And that's really another really important aspect of the Everything Sucks Now What program. And it's something that after 8 years of kind of feeling like mine was ripped out from under me like a rug and just tripping over it onto my face and just eating shit, I really do kind of have a lot of perspective now about how are we going to do this? How are we going to get back our sense of innocence, our sense of awe, our sense of wonder? Because, playing and doing this inner child work doesn't really make a difference unless we have the trust, because otherwise we're really just going through the motions. It's like meditating, but you're on autopilot. It doesn't really matter. So, if we want to get back that sense of innocence, that sense of like the naivety almost, but you don't want full naivety either, right? You don't want full naivety. You want naivety, but like it's the trust factor, isn't it? Really, at the end of the day, that innocence is the sense of trust. You want the wisdom, but with the trust at the same time, because you don't want to have your guard up. You don't want to have to be like, who is that? What is that? Put that down. I don't like that. I don't want to be on edge. I don't want to be on hypervigilance mode all the fucking time. You don't want that. You also want to be able to like go hula hoop, but not worry that everything is like out to get you, you know? So you can go hula hoop, but if you're dead inside, it doesn't really matter. So how can like that's kind of another really important aspect of the Everything Sucks program is I want to be able to show you how to do the things that bring you joy without feeling dead inside again. Okay, so going back to the bad advice, another person said, people at their camera club, this is a photographer, someone at multiple people at their camera club said, don't photograph birds. Everyone does it. You'll never stand out. Even just the first part of it, don't photograph birds. Who cares? Who cares? And that's going even deeper than that. Like, I really would want to drive home that the Everything Sucks program is so much about just understanding the cosmic joke of all of this. And that's one of the biggest ways that I know how to help us not feel dead inside is to actually zoom out and understand how to embrace absurdity and the cosmic joke of all of this. Like, you're telling me that in this photography club to not take a photo of the thing that I like, even though we're all on a spinning ball in outer space that we don't know how to explain in a space of growing infinity. But yeah, I shouldn't photograph the bird because why? And by the way, the bird is a dinosaur. It's the closest thing we have to a dinosaur. It's basically been here for millions of years. But yeah, okay, I won't photograph the bird because why? Because you don't want me to? Who are you? Who am I? Right? And like if you can just kind of like keep playing with it and being absurd and you eventually kind of have a real laugh about it, because that's the other thing. It's like we're not even really experiencing who we are anymore in our bodies. We're just we feel dead inside. We feel hollow. We feel numb and disconnected and disassociated and hopeless. And we didn't think adult things were going to be like this. It's just autopilot for days, you know? And I get it. I really do. And I mean, I feel like it's like that for most people in general. And then you throw on top trauma and mental illness and chronic illness and pain and having children and having to keep a business afloat and debt. And I mean, there's too many things, right? There's too many things. And I want you to understand that I don't think this has to be the way that it has to be forever. I don't think we have to stay on autopilot. I don't know that you can 100% get back your innocence and your naivety. I don't think that's true, but I don't think we have to stay dead inside. And I have some ideas and some actual practices about how to do it. Okay. Oh, so I wanted to go through the anti-advice survival list. So just like some basic cliche ones. So the idea is that this is like a printable in the bonus that you get. It's a printable list of kind of reframed phrases so that the next time you hear something that's a cliche, you can have this different land of a reframe, and it's just kind of like an easy thing. You can print it out even if you want, or you can, use some of the ones that you hear or the ones that you replay in your head as your inner critic. You can copy and paste them on your phone or whatever, or just use them in your journal. It doesn't matter, whatever you want to do. So some of them are just like silly things to do. So, for example, when people say just smile, like I immediately think of Broad City when they just go, "Eh." But so another thing is you could tape googly eyes on your fridge and let it smile at you, right? I don't think that we always have to just do advice, or say advice. We can just have experiences of silliness and absurdity. And then, when we're having a really tough time and someone says, well, like, there's so much to be grateful for. Yeah. Again, it depends on who you are, right? Because sometimes when people say that to me, I'm like, oh my God, okay, you know what? Actually, there is. And when I can zoom out and get perspective and think about the world at large, I'm like, sometimes honestly, I would say 85% of the time for me as a person, it works on me. I'm like, I actually do feel better when I think about gratitude because I'm aware of the fact that gratitude is comparison. And when I'm like, I am not in a war zone. I should probably it's not that I should, but I am aware of what I have and what I could be experiencing, and I automatically do feel grateful. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but it does really help me. But for a lot of people, it doesn't. It makes them feel worse. So, again, knowing your audience and including you, right? So, if be grateful in a time of stress doesn't help you, what you could do is you could maybe try saying something that feels less terrible right now, or something you would want to have feel less terrible right now, like a desire even. Same thing for it could be worse, right? And you could just say, "Yeah, but it could also be better, and I'm allowed to want it to be better." Or someone saying like, "Get over it." That one's fucking annoying as shit. So you can say, well, actually, you don't have to say anything. This is another one. You can just leave and go burrito yourself, and put yourself in a big old tent of burritos in a fort, and then put a sign up that says temporarily under construction, And then think positive. What if we, instead of, for this moment, I think thinking positively is great. I am obviously not against thinking positively, but I also think we can think weird. What if we thought weirdly instead and allowed that to be a tool for us to think about how many faces we can count in this room? Like how many faces can we find? Can we find a face in this microphone? Can we find a face in a tree outside? Like how many objects look like they might be personified, right? Or I don't know, just let your brain be bizarre instead of trying to count blessings, count bizarreness. And if someone says like, "Well, you just need to go outside and walk and need fresh air." For me, actually, that's something that I really do need, and something that hurts me and harms me is to stay inside. And the longer I stay inside, the longer I want to stay inside. So if someone actually drags me outside, it is almost certain to help me. However, you are allowed to just say, "You know what? You're right." And then open the window and stick your tongue out and fuck off the outside and say, "I licked the sky. Are you happy?" You know what I mean? You're allowed to be rebellious. You're allowed to be defiant. You're allowed to be silly. You're allowed to be whatever. If someone tells you to stop being dramatic, you can put on a show tune, pull out a hairbrush, and sing it like you're auditioning for a soap opera and be like, um, I don't know how else to be right now. I'm so sorry. I'm just saying that we're the concept of needing to respond to someone that thinks that they know best for us is wrong. Like we don't have to do that. We don't have to placate someone. I think there's a difference between listening to if Matt tells me something that he is very concerned about me and he knows what I need, right? Like pulling me out of perspective and taking me outside because he knows those things work for me because they're tried and true and tested and he knows me. That's different than a random person saying something. And I want you to feel empowered and emboldened to like no bad advice anymore. Okay. So what we've done here hopefully today is that we've taken invalidation and we've turned it into a little bit of relief and given it some perspective as well. And that in itself is a form of rebellion. And we're taking this just as a seed and reclaiming power from advice that maybe has hurt you in the past. If you have something that you are like, this is something that I've been told that I would love to reframe and I can't get a handle on like specifically how to do that, and I'd love to have help walking me through that, feel free to put that in, the comments or later, whether you're here in the live or later on the replay inside of YouTube or um, the positive pulse, and we can work on creating that as a specific reframe, whether that is a text or activity. And you can also be specific about your request about like, I'd like it to be a phrase or an activity or both. And yeah, so I hope that you understand now that like why it matters is, the next time your brain or someone else says just smile, you don't have to do that. And if someone else says, have you tried yoga? You won't be like empty-handed. You have these tools, you have the worksheet, you have that ready-made shield, and just the kind of narrative reframe cognitively that that this doesn't matter. Their advice doesn't matter. And that anything is coming from fear or protection or possessiveness or jealousy even. And that list can help you interrupt the spiral, and so can you. So I want to let you know that not just that, but like we can also talk about how to actually live with this list more practically so that it becomes a part of your survival toolkit and not just like a funny workshop memory. So you could just stick this list somewhere visible. You could print it out and tape it to your fridge. You could tuck it into a journal, or you could set it as a lock screen on your phone. I also mentioned like if there's some specific ones that you like that you can copy and paste them out, because the ones that I listed out a couple for you, but there's actually 30 different ones on there. So there's a bunch for you to check out. And then you can also take one of the ones that you really like and you can turn it into a daily ritual. Like instead of forcing gratitude, you can whisper one thing that feels less awful before bed. And you can use them as calls and response. So if you ever hear a cliche going off in your head, you can like stop being dramatic. Then you can respond out loud with your new reframed version. Like, okay, you know what? I'm actually going to lip sync dramatically for 30 seconds. And also you can come up with your own responses to these. These are just ideas. So if the response for stop being dramatic doesn't feel right for you and you want to come up with another thing, or yours is funnier or weirder than mine or just more appropriate for who you are, cross it out and make yours, make your own full list. It doesn't matter, right? This is the whole idea. It's just an idea. And then you can also have a buddy system. You can share this list with a friend and agree that you're going to text each other every time you think of one or hear one, and then like help each other reframe them when you both feel like you're in the pit. I think something that we don't really think about or give ourselves enough credit for is that most of the time when we feel really low, we're not usually completely at the bottom of the pit. We are still willing and able to help other people. And sometimes one of the best things that we can do for others, even though we know they're having a hard time, is to actually ask for their assistance. And if they're unwilling to respond in that moment, then we know how low they really are. Because especially how much of us have unfortunately been conditioned to be people pleasers, we are willing to go above and beyond even when we are so low, right? So but it also gives us like a task. It gives us something else to focus on. It gives us a distraction. And I can't even remember who said it, but I heard someone else say that in a really succinct way. It's just like sometimes the kindest thing that you could do for somebody who's going through something is to ask for their help with a project. And I couldn't agree more. I've always kind of done that as like a test almost, when someone feels like maybe they're like slipping even into like tendencies of, what I'm talking about, like that I will kind of ask for their help. And if they are like, "Oh yeah, what do you need?" I realize that they're not really actually in a place of that deep of a darkness, because if they are still willing to help, you know what I mean? They still have a bit of gumption there, and we just need to figure out how to do it. But if they are still like unresponsive and they can't get up at all still, now we need a real fucking action plan. It's very interesting the way our minds work, especially women. I think sometimes it's like because we're so, again, conditioned to respond and help. Well, I don't know that that's exclusively women, but regardless. Um, people that we care about, you know? Okay, so in the moment, case by case uses with this kind of list and this kind of practice, when your inner critic voice pops up and you hear like, well, you should just smile more, then you can, pick up the magic reframe and do it in real time. And also just noticing the ones I think that are the most common for you. So going through the 30 of them and like starring the ones that are like the ones that, pop up in your own head, and then knowing that you have that 10 seconds of absurdity to interrupt the spiral. So the more you practice it, the more you're going to like the less you're going to need the list, So you can just have these kind of in your head, but you can always have a list or a screenshot on your phone or whatever it is that you can reference in real time, and then you get used to it, and that's what a practice becomes, is you don't really need a reference anymore. And when someone else gives you bad advice, instead of absorbing it, we counter it in our heads first with our list, and it becomes a shield, not just a list. Now, I also want to let you know that my belief is that we we actually have this, like, so when people say something like this, like when someone else gives you bad advice or when you notice your inner critic popping up, you might have this immediate kind of resistance to the feeling, of being like, well, how am I to notice that? It's something that's so insidious. It's just kind of repetitive and it's been happening for my whole life. So how on earth am I just going to start to begin being aware of it? So in self-development in general, and the first step is always to become aware of something, right? But people don't talk about what the step is before that. So I want to give you a little tip, which is you can't become aware of something if there's no space to do that. So my tip for you in that area is, the reason that we're not aware, and that maybe the books and the classes and these kinds of things didn't really need to preface this in the 90s and before, is because we weren't so distracted. So I think that we're on autopilot so much, we are so distracted, there are so much screens and stimuli, that now our bodies don't really have a chance to decompress and disconnect. And every chance that we get for a second of alone time, we're scrolling, and we don't really have a chance to have our own thoughts as much anymore, unless we're like in the shower, and even then maybe we're listening to a podcast or something, right? So there's not really any down alone time. So the preemptive advice to how to gain awareness so that you can understand when things are popping up. And this does not only apply to noticing when bad advice comes up, noticing when your inner critic pops up, noticing when someone else gives you bad advice. It applies to self improvement across the board. Whenever you get the advice of, how can I become more aware of this state of my being? It's to disconnect. It's to have no screen time. It's to get off autopilot. It's to go play. It's to go be in nature. It's to be human, to connect with people, to connect with creativity, and to disconnect from screens. Okay? To have your own thoughts. So when you give yourself that practice daily, you're going to start creating more space in your brain, and then you'll have more awareness, and then you will be able to have more awareness of the specific thing you're looking for. Okay. And if you ever feel like you're wanting to practice this bad advice situation, this bad advice, then and you're like, I feel paralyzed. I'm not sure which one to pick. There's 30. I don't know what to do. Just pick one at random. Use a random number generator. It doesn't really matter. Don't overthink anything. Absurdity thrives on randomness. And then if we want to take a look at any kind of additional limiting beliefs here, like maybe I'm going to forget to use it, then one, remember to create the space in your brain do some disconnecting, do some autopilot, let's get off autopilot as much as possible. Let's reconnect to being human. And then also let's make it visible. You can hang it up somewhere if you want to, or you could put a sticky note that just reminds you of like anti-advice or something that's just like a reminder that you have it. And if you're kind of, objection, so to speak, is that it feels silly, then yeah, you're right. Exactly. That's the point. Silliness interrupts the heaviness that logic can't. And if your fear or objection is that it's not going to work for you, then I don't know, I guess understand that this isn't going to have to fix you, you know? You just need to be open to something working 1%. Just like, are you willing for this to help you 1%? If 1% counts, then let's try it. And let's take a look at like what this might look like for you a little bit differently. If writing feels hard, then you can record yourself saying your reframed advice and then you could play it back to yourself when you need it. If you're more visual, you could doodle out one of the reframes like a little cartoon or a meme. And if you're more sensory based, you could pair it with an action, like squeezing a stress ball while you're saying it. You could also tap, you can incorporate it into tapping. Earlier this week, I did a guided EFT tapping session on feeling numb and flatlined. So if that's something that you also are interested in, you should check out the other live recordings that I've done earlier this week. And there's also a replay of it inside of the Positive Pulse, right above this in the same section of the Stuck and Autopilot section. And it also comes with some positive affirmations. And with tapping, all you have to do is you could just like tap out everything that's in the bad advice on the points. And you could just tap it on your body using acupressure along with the ancient meridian points. And maybe that'll help you differently. And every time you're using this list, you're basically just reclaiming your inner world without utilizing toxic positivity. You're taking agency even when you're exhausted, and you're letting yourself feel more human again, a little bit more alive without pretending that everything's fine. And again, this is just one playful piece inside of the program, Everything Sucks, Now What? And we're going to keep building survival tools like this until you have a whole personal library to lean on. And we're going to just move out of, that feeling of fight or flight and survival and kind of being on the floor and we can't get up and we don't know what to do and everything feels so overwhelming that we can't start, to just building up over the course of 8 weeks to being able to integrate into just moving out of it, feeling happier, feeling healthier, feeling more aware, more alive. And again, what if just 1% was all you needed? Moving from a 1 to a 3 is so much more intense than moving from like a 7 to a 9. So let's be open to that. We're not going to have just one list. We're going to have a whole toolkit, and you can pick and choose a la carte, whatever works for you. There's so many different features. This is just one playful exercise in the full program, but we're doing 8 full weeks of this, and you're going to get flipping scripts and rituals and building your own personal survival menu and writing your own manifesto. And you're going to get 8 live calls that are all on different topics. And let me actually tell you a little bit more about the stuff that's inside of the program. So each week we're going over different things. So we're going to talk about things like, I feel awful and I don't even know where to start and nothing matters. So what's the point? And I feel numb and disconnected from myself and I don't know my purpose. So I must be doing life wrong. And I feel like nobody with no identity to hold on to. And I've had like glimpses of feeling good, but I don't know how to keep it. And then also I'm scared of what's going to happen when this course ends. And then we have all these extra features like pep talks and a scream into the void hotline and a crisis survival guide and a meaning map and a now what journal and philosophy prompt cards and a 1% more alive challenge, absurdity generator, rebel rituals, playlists, watch lists, and the live sessions. Even if you don't come live, there's replays and you can lurk. You don't have to share. And again, the discount for the pre-sale ends today, and the payment plans also go away today. So I hope that you will join us. It's over $6,000 worth of support, and you can get in for today. The pre-sale pricing is $88. It's less than $11 a week and $3 a resource, and you can start with a payment plan for just $44 today, but after tonight, the price goes up. So if this one workshop for free gave you a laugh or just the survival list, then imagine what 8 weeks could do. The pre-sale ends tonight. We start October 5th, so don't wait. Join at the link that's going through the scroll right here, uncustomary.org/everything sucks, and the printable list of reframed phrases so that you can hear, your other ideas that we've been talking about is right there at uncustomary.org/pp. And I hope that this was helpful for you. Please leave me a comment, like the chat, like the video, share it to your friends, and even, of course, you can still join, and you can even join after October 5th because there is still a replay for everything. But I love you, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Okay, bye-bye.